Well, welcome everybody to HTML Email V2, this front-end master's workshop. We have a fun day filled with email delights aplenty. I'm excited to kind of dig into some more modern approaches to email development, hopefully show you a couple of new tricks and interesting things you can do in email. It should be a pretty quick workshop because all we really need for an email is this, right? We just need an image dumped into some HTML, and then we send it on our way. No, we'll get into a couple of reasons why this is like a terrible idea, and hopefully you're not sending emails that are all image-based. Kick things off, I'm Jason Rodriguez. I work for a company called Litmus. This is our logo, so it sometimes gets mistaken for like a weird Iron Man logo or something like that. I'm the email evangelist there. I basically go around and teach people about email design, development, marketing practices. I've written a couple of different books on email development. You can check out my website, rodriguez.com, or follow me on Twitter. But I spend most of my time thinking about email. I like to say that I've lost most of my hair because of that fact. Usually dealing with Outlook and Gmail. Until recently, Gmail's gotten a little bit better in the last couple of years. We'll look at how that's affected email design development historically and kind of moving forward here. So today we have a couple of things planned. Pre-lunch, we're going to be looking at just the foundations of email design and development. So we're going to be looking at what HTML you're going to use, what CSS you're going to use, and how to make those emails accessible to the widest range of users out there. After lunch, we're going to dig into more about layouts and responsive design, and then we'll touch a little bit on adding some interactivity into email campaigns. We're not going to go super deep into that, but I'll show you some of the basics of how interactivity in email actually works, because you don't have the luxury of something like JavaScript in the inbox, so we have to do a couple of hackier things to get interactivity in email working. To get started, you don't really need anything very fancy. We're not going to be installing any frameworks or JavaScript libraries or anything like that. You can use the editor of your choice. I'll be using Visual Studio Code today, but literally anything you can write HTML and CSS in and see a preview works for you, which is nice. The tooling for email development is super easy. The one add-on I usually like to have in my editor is Emmet, which allows you to just quickly expand code based on shortcuts. So if you do have that, it's nice, especially when we start using things like tables for our development, because that'll save you the trouble of writing, table TRTD a million different times. So Emmet's a good thing to have. A lot of times as you start getting deeper into design development, you'll start creating some well-worn, kind of battle-tested codes. So you'll want to save those as like snippets or partials, and most editors allow you to have that functionality in there, so that's a good thing to have too. When it comes to previewing our emails, we're just going to be using a browser. I'll be using Chrome. We will look at another tool called Litmus, which is obviously the company I work for, but we have an extension for Chrome that allows you to preview your email campaigns in almost 100 different email clients, which is really at the heart of email development, is figuring out what works across all these different email clients and knowing what HTML to use, what CSS to use, and what breaks where. So we'll see how that kind of works out so we can preview those email campaigns and make sure it's working as intended. But really, any amount of browser works for you. If you want to, you can set up an Outlook account or a couple of different email addresses and send your test emails in there. It's always handy to test on real devices, but Litmus kind of eases the pain for that. The code up there, I put in both CodePen and GitHub. The GitHub repo is nice because it has a README with a bunch of different resources, links out to tools, things we're going to be talking about today. So definitely check that out. But if you do want to see the CodePen stuff and have that kind of interactive environment, it's up there as well. But github.com/Rodriguez_J/frontendmasters will get you that repo with all the kind of finalized examples of what we're going to be looking at today. Does anybody know who this guy is? It's not my dad. It's nothing like that. So this is Ray Tomlinson. Does anybody know what he did? No? He invented the modern concept of email. I'm curious, what year do you think the first email was actually sent? Anybody?
1969.
69? Now close. 1971 was the first use of an email with that @ symbol. So prior to that, people were using things like the ARPANET, the precursor to the internet, and leaving messages on servers, but Ray Tomlinson invented that idea of using the @ symbol for an email. Who knows when the first kind of marketing spam email was sent?
91.
91?
Early 90s.
Early 90s? 1978, actually. Yeah, there was a guy named Gary Thuerk who worked for DEC, the DEC, the Digital Equipment Corporation, which built like massive mainframe computers and stuff. So in 78, he actually emailed a list of 400 people. It was a message about DEC's new, whatever their mainframe was at the time. So at this point, though, the ARPANET was controlled by the government. So it was the Defense Communications Agency, I think it was, that was overseeing this network of computers. So when that happened, some military guy contacted Gary Thuerk's boss and was like really pissed off about that email campaign. But it actually worked out really well. He ended up generating somewhere between $13 and $14 million in sales from that 400-person list. But since then, we all probably we've kind of redefined and seen how that definition of spam has progressed over the years. So in the last couple of years, it's something like 180 billion spam messages are sent every day, which is insane to think about. That's a lot of email that's sent that nobody wants. But it's interesting to see like how that's developed over time.